Chapter 1. The Golden Cage and the Whispering Wind. The gilded cage of the Viridian Palace had grown suffocatingly small. For Princess Ilara, its towering walls and manicured gardens were less a sanctuary and more a beautiful prison. Each jewel-encrusted goblet, every silk-draped corridor, a constant reminder of a destiny not her own. She was a creature of vibrant curiosity and an unyielding spirit, qualities ill-suited to the ceremonial life expected of her. Her heart yearned for the raw, unfiltered truth of the world beyond the palace gates, the laughter of market vendors, the scent of damp earth after a rain, the sight of 1,000 stars, unobscured by the city's opulent glow. The weight of her crown felt heavier with each passing day, a metaphorical burden pressing down on a soul that yearned for freedom, for purpose, beyond pageantry. One moonless night, cloaked in a simple, coarse dress she had painstakingly sewn in secret, Ilara slipped past slumbering guards and intricate wards. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird seeking release, a pouch containing a few precious coins, a small worn locket from her late mother, and an even smaller dagger, a gift from a sympathetic training master, were her only companions. She didn't look back, not at the silhouette of the palace glowing faintly in the distance, nor at the life she was leaving behind. There was only the whisper of the wind guiding her forward, a promise of freedom, a defiant leap into the unknown. The cold night air invigorated her, a sharp contrast to the stale, perfumed air of her chambers. Every rustle of leaves, every distant dog's bark, was a symphony of her new, wild world. The world outside was exactly as she had imagined, and yet profoundly different. The air was sharper, the ground beneath her worn boots unforgiving. People moved with a hurried purpose she had never witnessed, their faces etched with stories of struggle and resilience. Ilara found refuge in the sprawling, bustling city of Silverwood, a place far enough from the capital of Eredor to offer anonymity, yet vibrant enough to provide opportunity. She rented a tiny room above a bakery, the scent of fresh bread, a comforting, alien aroma that spoke of simple, honest living. She learned to haggle, to mend, to sweep, to live. Her royal grace transformed into a quiet dignity, her delicate hands calloused from honest work. She discovered a strength she never knew she possessed, not just physical endurance, but a fierce independence. Her kindness, however, remained untarnished. She often shared her meagre meals with street children, her clear, perceptive eyes seeing beyond their ragged clothes to the hunger in their souls, offering them warmth and a rare, genuine smile. One rain-lashed evening, a figure lay slumped in a narrow alleyway, barely visible beneath the overhang of a decaying building. Most hurried past, heads bowed against the tempest, indifferent to the plight of another unfortunate soul. But Ilara, returning from a particularly long shift at the local textile shop, couldn't. A pang of raw empathy pierced her. She knelt beside him, the rain plastering her simple cloak to her frame, the chill seeping into her bones. He was a man of imposing height, even in his collapsed state, dressed in dark, sodden clothes that hinted at better days. His face, partially obscured by dark, matted hair, was grim with pain, a wound visible on his arm. His breath was shallow, his body shivering uncontrollably, a vulnerable stillness beneath the torrent. "Hey," she whispered, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the fear clutching at her. "Are you all right?" No response, just a low groan, a primal sound of distress that pierced the drumming rain. Ilara hesitated for only a moment. Her upbringing screamed caution, warning her against strangers, against danger. But her heart urged her to act, to extend the same selfless compassion she had always yearned to give. With immense effort, she helped him to his feet, his sheer weight nearly overwhelming her, his arm slung heavily over her shoulder. He leaned heavily on her, a silent, almost primal sound escaping his lips as they stumbled through the slick, cobbled streets. Her tiny room was far from luxurious, barely more than a closet, but it was warm and dry, a sanctuary from the relentless downpour, a beacon in the storm. She laid him gently on her makeshift bed, a straw mattress on the floor, and set about cleaning his wound with what little she had, boiled water and a piece of clean linen. Her movements efficient and surprisingly gentle, his eyes, when they finally flickered open, were an astounding shade of storm grey, deep and unfathomable, etched with a weariness that seemed to predate his current injury. They fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. Surprise, perhaps, or a guarded distrust. He said nothing, simply watched her with those haunted eyes, as if assessing a threat. Ilara, however, wasn't easily intimidated. She met his gaze with a calm, unwavering resolve. "You're safe here," she stated, her voice soft but firm, cutting through the silence of the small room. "For now." She didn't know who he was, nor did she care about his past. All she knew was that a human being was suffering, and she possessed the capacity to help. This act of selfless compassion, undertaken without question or expectation, marked the true beginning of a story far grander than any royal decree. The world outside the palace had indeed brought her trials, but it had also brought her closer to a fate she could never have foreseen, a destiny woven with threads of kindness and an unexpected, dangerous love. Chapter 2. Silent Gazes and Shared Spaces. The first few days were a study in silence. Kalen, the man Ilara had rescued, was a phantom presence in her small room. He accepted the food and water she offered, his movements economical, almost wary, his gaze perpetually distant. His initial distrust, however, seemed to soften into a cautious observation, a quiet weighing of her intentions. Ilara, in turn, found herself fascinated by him. His stoicism was profound, his few words clipped and devoid of unnecessary pleasantries. Yet there was a quiet strength in his stillness, a profound stillness that resonated with her own need for calm amidst the chaos of her new life. He never spoke of his past, nor did she press him, respecting the invisible wall he had erected around himself. She simply offered what she could, shelter, sustenance, and a quiet, unassuming kindness that asked for nothing in return. Ilara continued her work at the textile shop, her days filled with the rhythmic whir of looms and the mundane tasks of mending and organising. She returned each evening to the muted glow of a single candle and Kalen's silent vigil. She would talk to him sometimes about her day, about the peculiar habits of her co-workers, or the snippets of news she overheard in the market. She spoke not expecting a reply, but simply for the comfort of another presence, a voice in the quiet that filled the small space. Occasionally she would catch him watching her, his storm-grey eyes unreadable, yet holding a flicker of something akin to curiosity, a fleeting warmth. It was in these moments that Ilara felt an unexpected connection, a sense of being truly seen by someone who wasn't blinded by her royal title or her assumed commoner status, someone who saw beyond the surface. One afternoon she returned to find Kalen attempting to mend a tear in his own worn tunic with clumsy, unpractised fingers, his large hands struggling with the delicate fabric. A rare, almost imperceptible twitch of his lips, perhaps a fleeting grimace of frustration, drew her attention. Ilara, whose hands were adept at embroidery and fine needlework from her palace days, gently took the garment from him. "Here," she murmured, her fingers deftly weaving the thread through the cloth. "Let me show you." Under her guidance, His large, calloused hands slowly learned the rhythm of the needle, his brow furrowed in concentration. It was a simple act, a shared moment of domesticity, a quiet communion that chipped away at the wall of reserve between them, a fragile bridge built between two disparate worlds. She noticed other things, the way his eyes always scanned the street below their window, a latent vigilance even in convalescence, as if expecting trouble. The quiet intensity with which he observed the city's inhabitants from afar, the occasional, almost imperceptible flinch at sudden loud noises, suggesting a life accustomed to danger, to conflict. There was a story in those deep-set eyes, a history of pain and conflict she could only guess at, a silent narrative of survival. He wasn't just a man, he was a silent testament to a life lived on the edge, a soul burdened by unseen battles. Elara, despite her sheltered past, recognized the signs, the subtle cues of a wounded warrior. One evening, a group of unruly patrons from the tavern downstairs began a loud, drunken brawl, their shouts and curses reverberating through the thin floorboards. Elara instinctively tensed, a fleeting memory of a similar disturbance near the palace gates resurfacing, a reminder of the dangers she had chosen. Kaelan, however, moved with a sudden, alarming swiftness. He was instantly alert, his eyes narrowed, his body coiled and ready. A dormant predator awakened. He didn't speak, but the message was clear in his posture, protective, watchful, dangerous. The brawl eventually subsided, but the incident left Elara with a profound realization. Kaelan, despite his quiet demeanor, was far from helpless. He was a man capable of violence, a silent force, yet he had allowed himself to be cared for, to be vulnerable in her presence. This juxtaposition was both unsettling and deeply intriguing, a captivating mystery. As days bled into weeks, a fragile rhythm established itself. Elara continued to provide, and Kaelan, in his silent way, began to contribute. He would chop the firewood she brought home, his movements precise and strong. He would watch the street, acting as an unspoken guardian. Their conversations, though still largely one-sided on Elara's part, grew richer in unspoken understanding. A glance, a shared smile over a freshly baked loaf of bread, a quiet sigh of contentment as the sun set over the city. These were their new dialogues, their silent confessions. Elara, despite her resolve to remain strong and independent, found herself increasingly drawn to his quiet strength, his unwavering presence. He was an anchor in her tumultuous new world, a silent confidant who saw her, truly saw her, not as a princess, not as a commoner, but simply as Elara. And Kaelan, observing the princess he was sworn to retrieve, found his professional detachment slowly eroding, replaced by an unsettling, yet undeniable, pull towards the woman who had extended her hand in kindness to a stranger. His mission, once crystal clear, was becoming clouded by the genuine warmth of her presence, by the blossoming of an unexpected, dangerous emotion. Chapter 3. Unveiling Shadows and Lingering Touches. The days grew longer, the sun painting the rooftops of Silverwood with hues of gold and amber. Kaelan's wound healed, leaving a faint, jagged scar on his forearm, a silent testament to his mysterious past. His strength had fully returned, a quiet power that hummed beneath his reserved exterior, a predator's grace now fully restored. Elara noticed how he moved with an almost predatory grace, his steps light and silent, his senses always alert. He often disappeared for hours during the day, returning with foraged herbs or mended tools, offering no explanation, and Elara, respecting his silent boundaries, asked for none. Yet a part of her wondered, a restless curiosity that buzzed beneath her practical surface, a craving to understand the depths he kept hidden. Their shared moments, though still sparse in spoken words, deepened in emotional resonance. One evening, a sudden chill permeated their small room, and Kaelin, without a word, rose and stoked the dying embers in their hearth, his broad back silhouetted against the flickering light, a silent silhouette against the encroaching darkness. As he knelt, Elara caught a glimpse of a faint, intricate tattoo peeking from beneath his collar, a symbol she didn't recognize, yet it hinted at affiliations far grander and more complex than any commoner's mark. Her breath hitched, a sudden revelation sparking in her mind. The image vanished as he settled back, his gaze once more fixed on the dancing flames. But the impression lingered, a puzzle piece she couldn't quite fit. Elara continued to share her dreams with him, not the grand aspirations of a princess, but the simple desires of a woman who wanted to make a difference. She spoke of the struggles of the poor, the injustices she witnessed daily, her voice filled with a passion that ignited a spark in Kaelin's usually impassive eyes, a reflection of her own unwavering empathy. He listened, truly listened, his head slightly tilted, and in those moments Elara felt an unusual sense of validation, a warmth spreading through her that transcended mere friendship. She saw glimpses of a profound empathy in his quiet responses, a shared understanding of the world's harsh realities. He would offer practical advice, concise and insightful, born of hard-won experience, revealing a depth of wisdom that surprised her. A market festival brought a rare splash of colour and revelry to Silverwood. Elara, reluctantly at first, allowed herself to be drawn into the festivities, the vibrant energy contagious. Kaelin, surprisingly, accompanied her, his presence a silent anchor in the bustling crowd. Amidst the clamour of merchants, the music of street performers, and the laughter of children, Elara found herself laughing freely, a sound she hadn't truly experienced since her escape, a genuine joy that bubbled forth. She bought a small, intricately carved wooden bird, its wings spread as if in flight, a symbol of her newfound freedom and hope. As she admired it, a petty thief, emboldened by the crowds, attempted to snatch her small pouch of coins. Before Elara could even react, Kaelin moved. It was a blur of motion, swift and decisive, a shadow striking. The thief was disarmed and pinned against a stall, not with brute force, but with a precise, practiced movement that spoke of rigorous training, of countless battles fought. His eyes, usually guarded, now blazed with a fierce, protective fire, a primal instinct unleashed. The thief, terrified, dropped the pouch and fled into the throng. Kaelin released him with a quiet snarl, a sound of contained fury. Turning back to Elara, his face once again a mask of calm, though his jaw was still tight. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, rougher than usual, betraying the controlled anger. Elara's heart pounded, not from fear, but from a dizzying cocktail of shock and a burgeoning realization. She looked at his hands, the hands that had so carefully mended his tunic, now capable of such formidable defence. I'm fine," she whispered, her gaze lingering on him. "Thank you." The incident left an indelible mark. It was clear Kaelin was no ordinary man. He possessed skills that belonged to warriors, to guards, to those who walked a dangerous path, a secret life hidden beneath his common exterior. The fantasy element woven subtly into the fabric of his being was no longer merely hinted at. It had revealed itself in that swift, almost preternatural speed. He was a silent protector, a shadow figure, and Elara found herself both intrigued and a little afraid of the depths he kept hidden. That night, as she lay on her straw mattress, the wooden bird clutched in her hand, she replayed the scene. Kaelin's protective instincts, his raw power, the possessive glint in his storm-grey eyes as he looked at her. It sent a shiver down her spine, a strange blend of apprehension and a thrilling awareness. The silent understanding between them had transformed. It was now infused with a nascent desire, a dangerous, undeniable pull that defied their disparate worlds and veiled identities. Their shared spaces were becoming too small for the secrets they both carried, too charged with the electricity of unspoken feelings. Chapter 4. The unspoken language of longing. The incident at the market acted as a catalyst, subtly altering the atmosphere in Ilara's small room. The unspoken trust between them deepened, but it was now laced with an undeniable tension, a fragile awareness of the feelings stirring beneath the surface. Ilara found herself hyper-aware of Kaelin's presence, the subtle scent of pine and rain that clung to his clothes, the quiet rhythm of his breathing as he slept, the way his shadow stretched long and dark across the floor in the fading light. Her heart, once so guarded, began to beat a different rhythm when he was near, a pulse that quickened at his proximity. Kaelin, too, seemed to struggle with the growing intensity. His storm-grey eyes, which had once held an impenetrable reserve, now often lingered on Ilara, a complexity of emotions churning within their depths, a battle of duty and desire. He would watch her as she worked, as she laughed, as she helped an injured bird outside their window. He saw the genuine goodness that radiated from her, the purity of her intentions, the fierce independence cloaked in gentle compassion. It was a stark contrast to the opulence and artifice of the palace life he knew she had abandoned, and it was disarmingly captivating. His mission to retrieve her felt increasingly like a betrayal of the woman he was coming to know, a conflict that tore at his soul. One afternoon, Ilara was sketching in her small notebook, capturing the intricate details of a wildflower she had found, its delicate petals a testament to nature's artistry. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, a stray strand of hair falling across her face. Kaelin, who had been sitting by the window, silently observing the street, rose and moved towards her. His shadow fell over her page, momentarily eclipsing the sunlight. Without a word, he gently reached out and tucked the errant strand behind her ear, his fingers brushing softly against her skin. The contact was brief, barely there, yet it sent a jolt through Ilara, a warmth that spread like wildfire, igniting an internal spark. She looked up, her breath catching, her emerald eyes meeting his. In that moment, the air crackled with an unspoken language, a yearning, a silent plea, a cautious acknowledgement of something profound blossoming between them. Kaelin's gaze was intense, revealing a vulnerability she hadn't seen before, a flicker of raw emotion that belied his usual stoicism. He cleared his throat, a sound rough and uncharacteristic, and retreated to the window, leaving Ilara's heart hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet room. Their evenings became a delicate dance of near touches and lingering gazes. They would share stories of their day, Kaelin occasionally offering a rare wry comment that would bring a genuine smile to Ilara's face, a smile that would soften the hard lines around his own mouth, a fleeting moment of shared joy. He started reading the worn books she kept, his powerful hands surprisingly gentle as he turned the pages, revealing a hidden tenderness. Ilara often found him lost in thought, his gaze fixed on the distance, a deep-seated sadness clouding his features. She longed to reach out, to ask, to understand the burdens he carried, but something in his proud, guarded demeanour held her back, respecting the invisible boundary he maintained. The fantasy element that was Kaelin's subtle gift, occasionally manifested in fleeting moments. He possessed an uncanny ability to sense danger before it materialized. A whisper in the wind, a shift in the air that others missed. He would subtly guide Ilara away from a collapsing market stall or steer her clear of a suspicious-looking crowd, his movements almost imperceptible, his explanations vague. Ilara, though sensing his unusual perception, attributed it to his street smarts, unaware of the deeper, inherent power that coursed through him, a hidden current of extraordinary ability. She didn't question it, only appreciated his quiet vigilance, his constant watchfulness. As the weeks passed, Ilara realized she was falling in love with this enigmatic man, this quiet protector with storm-grey eyes and a soul that seemed to hold ancient sorrows. It was a love born not of grand declarations or passionate gestures, but of shared silences, unspoken understandings, and a profound respect for each other's strength and vulnerabilities. She knew he was a mystery, a man with secrets, but her heart, once determined to remain free, now yearned to unravel them, to find solace in the shared depths of their souls. This burgeoning love, however, was built on a foundation of hidden truths, a beautiful edifice teetering on the precipice of inevitable revelation. For Callan, the weight of his mission and his growing affection for Ilara became an agonizing conflict, an internal storm brewing beneath his calm exterior, threatening to break the fragile peace they had found together, threatening to expose the dangerous truth. Chapter 5. The Whispers of a Royal Decree. The idyllic bubble they had created began to show cracks, tiny fissures through which the harsh realities of their individual worlds threatened to seep. News from the capital, whispered in hushed tones among market vendors, spoke of a frantic search for the runaway Princess Ilara, royal decrees plastered on city walls, though geographically distant, now felt chillingly close, their stark pronouncements a reminder of the life she had abandoned. Ilara would occasionally catch sight of a stylized rendering of her own face, a softened, idealized version, accompanied by a hefty reward for information leading to her return. A cold dread would coil in her stomach, but she would quickly dismiss it, clinging to the belief that in Silverwood she was simply Ilara, a commoner, an anonymous face in the crowd. Callan, however, saw every poster, heard every whisper. His clandestine searches intensified, his focus narrowing. He spent his days gathering intelligence, tracking the movements of royal agents who had begun to filter into Silverwood, their presence a palpable threat. The closer he got to fulfilling his duty, the more agonizing his internal conflict became. He was a man of unwavering loyalty, sworn to the crown, but his heart, a fortress he believed impenetrable, was now irrevocably bound to the woman he was supposed to retrieve. The idea of returning her to her gilded cage, of extinguishing the vibrant flame of freedom he had come to adore, was a torment, a betrayal of his deepest feelings. The third-party drama began subtly. A nobleman, Lord Theron, a distant cousin to the royal family and known for his insufferable arrogance and ambition, arrived in Silverwood on a supposed inspection tour. In truth, he was quietly overseeing the search efforts, hoping to curry favour with the king. One afternoon, while Ilara was selling her meticulously crafted embroidery at a small stall, her fingers moving deftly over the fabric, Lord Theron spotted her. Her posture, her natural elegance, even in simple clothes, caught his eye, a stark contrast to the usual commoner women. He approached, his gaze lingering on her with an unpleasantly proprietary air, a leering appraisal. A commoner, yet you possess a certain regal air, he drawled, his voice oily smooth, dripping with condescension. What is your name, girl? Ilara, schooled in royal etiquette, yet hardened by common life, met his gaze without flinching, her emerald eyes unwavering. Ilara, she stated simply, her voice clear and steady. And you, sir? His eyes narrowed, surprised by her composure and directness. Lord Theron, perhaps you would consider gracing my estate with your presence. I assure you life there would be far more comfortable than this. He extended a hand, a patronizing smile on his lips, expecting immediate deference. Before Ilara could formulate a polite but firm refusal, Kaelin appeared as if from nowhere, his imposing presence a stark contrast to Lord Theron's polished facade. He moved to stand subtly between Ilara and the nobleman, his storm-grey eyes fixed on Theron with an intensity that promised swift repercussions for any perceived threat. Kaelin's hand rested casually on the hilt of a concealed dagger beneath his tunic, a gesture barely visible to Ilara, but instantly recognised by the discerning eye of a noble like Theron, a silent warning. Lord Theron's smile faltered. He was not accustomed to being challenged by commoners, particularly ones who moved with such silent authority, such quiet danger. "And who is this ruffian?" he sneered, though a flicker of caution entered his eyes. "Her companion," Kaelin stated, his voice a low rumble, devoid of inflection, yet imbued with an unmistakable warning, a steel thread beneath the calm. "She is not interested." A tense silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken challenge. Lord Theron, unwilling to create a public scene, especially with an unknown opponent who radiated quiet danger, gave a dismissive sniff. "Very well," he said, his eyes still fixed on Ilara, with an unpleasant curiosity, as if she were a prize. "But I shall remember you, Ilara." He then swept away, his expensive cloak swishing around him, his retreat a mixture of annoyance and nascent intrigue. Ilara's heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She glanced at Kaelin, whose face was, once again, a mask of impassive calm, though his jaw remained tightly clenched, betraying the lingering tension. "Kaelin," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "you didn't have to." "He was insulting you," Kaelin interrupted, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, ensuring Theron was truly gone. His tone was definitive, leaving no room for argument, an absolute declaration of protection. In that moment, Ilara felt a surge of emotions, gratitude, concern, and a deep, unsettling awareness of the danger Kaelin represented, and the danger he was willing to face for her. He was a protector, yes, but also a mysterious figure who moved in shadows and carried silent threats. The encounter, though brief, underscored the perilous tightrope they walked, blurring the lines between common life and royal intrigue. Lord Theron's interest was a dangerous spark, threatening to ignite the carefully constructed wall of anonymity Ilara had built around herself, and pushing Kaelin closer to the brink of his inevitable choice between love and duty, a collision course set into motion. Chapter 6. A Dance of Duty and Desire. The encounter with Lord Theron left a lingering unease, a chill that seeped into their quiet sanctuary. Kaelin, sensing the renewed threat, became even more vigilant, his shadow always close to Ilara's, his presence a constant, reassuring anchor. He would accompany her to the market, waiting patiently outside the textile shop, his presence a silent shield against the world. The Royal Guard's presence in Silverwood became more overt, their distinctive tabards a jarring sight in the bustling commoner streets, a stark reminder of Ilara's inescapable past. Ilara couldn't ignore the escalating danger, nor the growing intensity of the gaze Kaelin now openly directed at her. It was a look that spoke volumes of longing, of fierce protection, and of an agonizing internal struggle, a silent plea that mirrored her own heart. One evening, as rain lashed against their window, mirroring the turmoil within, Ilara found Kaelin staring out into the tempest, his back to her, his shoulders hunched, a silhouette of quiet despair. The silence in the room was heavy, laden with unspoken words, with the weight of impending truths. Ilara felt compelled to break it. "Kaelin," she began softly, her voice barely a whisper against the drumming rain, "what troubles you?" He didn't turn, but his voice was a low, rough murmur against the persistent drumming of the rain. "The city grows unsafe for you, Ilara." "Because of me?" she asked, her heart sinking, the realization a bitter taste on her tongue. "Because I fled." A long silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the relentless rain. Then Kaelan finally turned, his eyes holding a depth of sorrow that startled her, a raw vulnerability she had rarely witnessed. "You fled because you sought freedom, a noble pursuit." He took a step towards her, his movements slow, deliberate, closing the distance between their worlds. "But the world you left behind does not forget easily." Ilara's gaze searched his face, trying to decipher the unsaid, the hidden truths that swam in his storm-grey eyes. "You know something, don't you, about my past, about who I really am?" It wasn't a question, but a statement born of intuition, a chilling certainty. "You've known all along." Kaelan hesitated, his jaw flexing, a muscle twitching in his cheek. The truth was a razor's edge, capable of inflicting deep wounds. He had been sent to find her, yes, but he had found something more profound in her simple, honest life. "I was tasked to find a runaway, yes," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, hoarse with the confession, "to ensure her safe return." The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating her nascent hopes. Ilara felt a cold dread creep into her stomach, swiftly followed by a surge of betrayal, a burning resentment. "So all this time," she breathed, her voice trembling, "your kindness, your help, it was all a part of your mission? To gain my trust?" A tear traced a path down her cheek, hot and stinging, a testament to her broken heart. "You're one of them, a royal guard." Kaelan reached out as if to touch her, but stopped himself, his hand hovering in the space between them, a chasm of misunderstanding. "No!" The word was sharp, filled with raw emotion, a rare outburst from his usually composed exterior. "No, Ilara, not like that, not anymore." His gaze pleaded with her, a desperate honesty in their depths, searching for understanding. "My duty was to return you, but my heart has found a different duty." The rain outside intensified, mirroring the storm raging within Ilara. A tempest of conflicting emotions. She saw the pain in his eyes, the genuine anguish, and a part of her wanted to believe him. But the betrayal cut deep, a wound that festered. "How can I trust you?" she whispered, backing away, her voice laced with hurt, the words barely audible. "You lied to me. You let me believe you were just a man, like any other, when all along you were observing me, judging me, waiting for the right moment to turn me in." "I never would," Kaelan swore, his voice fierce, his storm-grey eyes burning with conviction. A desperate plea for her belief. "Not now, not after everything." He took another step, closing the distance between them, bridging the gap with his desperate honesty. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears, a tender, healing touch. The contact was electric, a current of raw emotion passing between them, a tangible connection. "I came to find a princess. I found a woman of remarkable strength and kindness. I found you, Ilara, and I would sacrifice everything to protect the freedom you so desperately sought." In that moment, the confession, the pain, the undeniable truth of his desire overwhelmed her. Her carefully constructed walls crumbled, shattering into dust. She saw not just the royal guard, but the man who had silently cared for her, protected her, listened to her dreams, who had seen her for who she truly was. The fantasy element of his existence, his extraordinary senses, his quiet vigilance, it all suddenly made sense. He wasn't just a guard. He was an almost mythical protector, bound by duty, but now unbound by love. Their lips met, tentative at first, then with a desperate urgency, a kiss that tasted of tears and rain and a dangerous, undeniable longing. It was a silent vow, a communion of two souls finally admitting the truth of their hearts, even as the storm of their conflicting worlds gathered force outside their door. Their love was revealed, but so too was the immense chasm that lay between them, demanding a choice that neither was ready to make, a destiny waiting to unfold. Chapter 7. The Royal Summons and a Heart Divided. The morning after their confession, a fragile peace settled between Ilara and Kaelin. The kiss had sealed something profound, a silent promise amidst the chaos, a delicate truce in the war of their hearts. Yet the air was still heavy with unspoken fears, the weight of their conflicting loyalties pressing down on them, an invisible burden. They both knew their newfound intimacy could not erase the stark reality of their identities, the chasm that separated a princess from her guard. Their fragile calm was shattered by the arrival of the Royal Guard in force, a troop of highly skilled warriors, identifiable by their ornate armour and the crimson standard of Eredor, descended upon Silverwood. They were led by Captain Valerius, a stern, unyielding man, known for his unwavering loyalty to the crown and his relentless pursuit of justice, or, in this case, his princess. The city buzzed with their presence, commoners scattering in fear, whispers of the missing princess growing into open speculation, her anonymity irrevocably broken. Kaelin, having slipped out at dawn to gather supplies, returned to find their street swarming with guards, his heart seized with a cold dread, a primal alarm ringing through his veins. He melted into the shadows, his heightened senses perceiving the danger, his eyes scanning for Ilara. He saw her, emerging from their small dwelling, compelled by the commotion, her simple dress a stark contrast to the gleaming armour. She was immediately recognised, despite her simple attire. Captain Valerius approached her, his face grim, his posture radiating authority. "Princess Ilara," he announced, his voice ringing with authority, cutting through the murmuring crowd. "By royal decree of His Majesty, you are commanded to return to Viridian Palace immediately. Your reckless flight has caused untold distress and jeopardized the stability of the kingdom." Ilara stood her ground, her face pale but resolute, her emerald eyes blazing with defiance. "I am no longer Princess Ilara," she declared, her voice carrying a surprising strength, a testament to her time among the common people. "I am Ilara, a free woman." Valerius scoffed, clearly unimpressed by her declaration of independence. "Your whims are a luxury the kingdom cannot afford. Your people require their future queen." He signalled to his men, who began to advance, forming a menacing semicircle around her. From the shadows, Kaelin felt a surge of adrenaline, a primal instinct to protect. His hand instinctively went to his hidden blade, his muscles tensing, ready to fight. But before he could act, Ilara's gaze, sharp and commanding, found his hidden location. She saw the readiness in his posture, the dangerous glint in his storm-grey eyes. A silent message passed between them, a desperate plea. "Don't. Not yet." She knew that if Kaelin revealed himself as anything other than a commoner defending her, his life would be forfeit, a sacrifice she was unwilling to make. Instead, she raised her voice, her regal bearing returning despite her simple clothes, the queenly grace asserting itself. "You will not lay a hand on me." She met Valerius's gaze with unwavering defiance, her chin held high. "I will return to the palace, but I will do so on my own terms, and only after I have said my goodbyes." Her eyes flickered towards the shadows where Kaelin hid, a promise veiled in her words, a silent farewell meant only for him. Valerius hesitated, surprised by her sudden compliance mixed with such fierce independence. A challenging mix. He was a man of protocol and preferred a peaceful resolution to a public skirmish with the runaway princess. "Very well, princess," he conceded, gesturing for his men to stand down, though his gaze remained suspicious. "But you will be escorted, and any goodbyes will be brief." Elara allowed herself to be surrounded, her small figure swallowed by the imposing presence of the royal guard, a golden bird re-entering its cage. Her eyes, however, still fixed on the place Kaelin hid, a silent plea in their depths. His heart ached with a profound sense of helplessness, a searing pain. He watched as they led her away, her small figure swallowed by the imposing presence of the royal guard. He saw the single defiant tear that escaped her eye, a testament to her pain, her courage, and her silent farewell. He knew he could have fought, but it would have been a suicide mission, and Elara's wisdom had prevented it. That night, Silverwood felt desolate. Elara was gone, returned to her gilded cage, the vibrancy of the city dimmed by her absence. Kaelin was alone, the weight of his unfulfilled mission and his desperate, burgeoning love for her an unbearable burden, a gnawing emptiness. He clenched his fists, his gaze fixed on the distant lights of Eredor, a burning resolve igniting within him. He was a royal guard, a man of duty, but he was also a man who had loved and lost and found something worth fighting for. His future was now intertwined with hers, not by decree but by the undeniable pull of his own heart. He would find a way, a path through the labyrinth of royal politics and ancient customs, to reclaim the woman who had transformed his solitary world. The separation was brutal, a wrenching apart of two souls just beginning to intertwine, but it also forged a steely determination in Kaelin, a promise whispered to the silent, starry night. "I am coming for you." Chapter 8. Palace Walls and Lingering Memories. The return to Viridian Palace was a chilling descent back into Elara's former life, a stark reversal of her hard-won freedom. The opulence felt suffocating, each heavy drape and polished floor a constant reminder of her imprisonment. The formal gowns were restrictive, the endless ceremonies hollow, devoid of true meaning. Every courtier's polite smile seemed to mask judgment. Every servant's deferential bow felt like a cage closing around her, tightening its hold. Her father, the king, a stern but ultimately loving man, had received her with a mixture of relief and stern disapproval. He lectured her on duty, on her responsibilities to the kingdom, on the potential for chaos her disappearance had caused. Elara listened, her face impassive, her mind a million miles away, replaying Kaelin's confession, the feel of his lips, the desperate honesty in his storm-grey eyes. His image was a beacon in the cold, sterile grandeur. The palace grounds, once her childhood playground, now felt like a gilded prison. She was constantly attended, her every move monitored by watchful eyes, her freedom an illusion. But even within these confines, Elara was not broken. Her independent spirit, honed by her time as a commoner, remained. She debated with her father on policies she now understood from a commoner's perspective, her voice sharp and intelligent. Much to the surprise of the court, she insisted on visiting the royal infirmary, bringing her practical knowledge of ailments and remedies to the royal healers, a testament to her empathy. She was Princess Elara, but she was also the Elara who had lived among the people, and that experience had irrevocably changed her, forging a queen far wiser and more compassionate. Meanwhile, Kaelin, having returned to Eredor discreetly, resumed his duties, his heart a raw, open wound that throbbed with every beat. He was now captain of the Royal Guard, a promotion earned through his relentless pursuit, and Ilara's safe return, a bitter irony that gnawed at his soul, mocking his true purpose. He moved through the palace corridors like a ghost, his silence more profound, his eyes holding a deeper, almost unbearable pain, a grief that no one in the opulent halls understood. He saw Ilara in every corner, heard her laughter in the echoes of the grand halls, her presence a phantom that haunted his every step. The opulent life she was forced to endure felt like a travesty to the woman he had come to love, a gilded cage obscuring her vibrant spirit. Their paths crossed inevitably in the vast halls of the palace. Their first encounter was in a bustling corridor, a sea of courtiers flowing between them, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Kaelin, in his gleaming armour, stood sentinel by a grand archway, his posture rigid. Ilara, dressed in a sweeping gown of emerald silk, was being escorted by ladies-in-waiting, a vision of captive beauty. Their eyes met across the distance, a silent, powerful current passing between them, an electric charge that defied the decorum of the court. Hers held a mixture of hurt, longing, and a flicker of defiant hope. His held agonizing regret, unwavering devotion, and a desperate promise. Neither spoke, yet everything was said in that fleeting, electrifying moment. The courtiers around them were oblivious, caught up in their trivial chatter, but the air around Ilara and Kaelin crackled with an intensity that transcended their surroundings. A private world formed in a public space. Lord Theron, now a frequent presence at court, observing Ilara with renewed, unsettling interest, noted the exchange. He saw the flicker in Ilara's eyes, the subtle shift in Kaelin's rigid posture, the undeniable connection. A sneer touched his lips. He knew Kaelin was just a guard, a loyal dog of the crown, but the raw emotion he witnessed spoke of something far more dangerous, a threat to his own ambitions. Theron, always ambitious, saw an opportunity to gain favour with the king, and perhaps even secure Ilara's hand. By exposing this forbidden attachment, he began subtly to sow seeds of doubt, whispering to other courtiers about Princess Ilara's unseemly attachment to a common guard during her flight, implying scandal and impropriety. The rumours, insidious and venomous, slowly began to spread, reaching the ears of the king, poisoning the courtly air. Ilara, though isolated, was not naive. She felt the pressure, the scrutiny, the subtle shift in the court's attitude towards her. She knew the whispers were designed to break her, to force her into a more conventional, pliable role. But her memories of Silverwood, of her life with Kaelin, were a fire in her soul, a burning defiance that refused to be extinguished. Every elegant banquet, every formal ball, every stilted conversation only strengthened her resolve. She longed for the raw honesty of her life with Kaelin, the genuine connection they had found amidst the poverty and simplicity. This opulent prison, far from breaking her, was only solidifying her conviction. Her heart belonged not to a crown, but to a man who, despite his duty, had dared to love her. The palace walls may have separated them physically, but they could not sever the powerful, invisible thread that bound their souls. A bond stronger than any royal decree. Chapter 9. Treachery and a Kingdom in Peril. Lord Theron's insidious whispers finally reached the king's ears, igniting a furious storm. The idea of his daughter, the future queen, entangled with a royal guard, was an insult to the crown, a scandal of epic proportions that threatened the very fabric of the monarchy. Kaelin was summoned to the king's chambers, accused of dereliction of duty and treasonous affections. The confrontation was brutal, the king's rage a palpable force. Kaelin, despite the king's booming voice and flashing eyes, stood silent, his eyes fixed on the floor, accepting his fate, unwilling to implicate Ilara further or deny his profound feelings. The king, seeing his silence as a confession, ordered Caelin's imprisonment and eventual execution. A harsh sentence for a love deemed illicit. Ilara, overhearing the frantic whispers of the servants, learned of Caelin's impending doom. A cold terror seized her, gripping her heart in an icy vice. This was the choice, stark and agonizing. Her crown or the life of the man she loved. But before she could act, a far greater threat emerged, dwarfing their personal drama. The kingdom of Eridor was plunged into crisis. A long-dormant magical curse, tied to an ancient relic hidden beneath the palace, was inexplicably reawakened. The sky over Eridor turned an ominous crimson. Strange shadowy creatures began to emerge from the surrounding forests, and a creeping blight started to consume the land, twisting it into grotesque forms. Panic spread through the capital, a tangible fear clutching at every citizen. The royal mages, powerful but bewildered, discovered that the curse was intricately linked to the royal bloodline. Only a true heir, pure of heart and willingly sacrificing for the kingdom, could activate the counterspell, but the exact method was lost to time, buried in forgotten lore. The king, distraught, confided in Ilara that his own lineage had become tainted by centuries of political manoeuvring and less than pure intentions, rendering him incapable. Ilara, however, having lived among the common people and having embraced a life of genuine compassion, possessed the untarnished spirit the prophecy required. Her very flight, her rejection of royal artifice for authentic connection, had preserved her purity, making her the unlikely key. In the midst of this chaos, Lord Theron, seeing an opportunity to seize power, subtly encouraged the panic, suggesting that the curse was a divine punishment for the king's weakness and Ilara's unnatural behaviour. He began to rally discontented nobles, positioning himself as the only one capable of restoring order. A wolf in sheep's clothing, seeking to capitalise on fear. Ilara, understanding the gravity of the situation, knew what she had to do. She remembered fragments of ancient palace legends, tales of the kingdom's founding, whispers of a guardian lineage dedicated to protecting the royal family and the land from such curses. A sudden, chilling realization dawned on her. Caelin, his exceptional skills, his silent vigilance, his subtle fantasy elements, his ancestral tattoo. He was not merely a guard, he was a descendant of those ancient guardians, a living link to the very magic that had once protected the kingdom, and perhaps the only one who truly understood the nature of the curse and the counterspell. His mission to find her was not just a royal order, it was an ancestral imperative, driven by a deep, instinctual understanding that the kingdom needed its true, pure princess. Breaking free from her attendants, Ilara stormed to the king's chambers, her face a mask of furious determination, her emerald eyes blazing. "Father," she declared, her voice ringing with authority, cutting through the fear-laden air. "Caelin must be released. He is the key to stopping this curse. He is a guardian, not merely a guard, and he possesses knowledge we desperately need." The king, bewildered by the unfolding catastrophe, was hesitant, but Ilara's fierce conviction, the wisdom and courage radiating from her, was undeniable. He saw not just his daughter, but a true leader, a queen forged in the fires of adversity. He gave the order. Caelin was released from the dungeon, his face gaunt, his body weakened, but his eyes still held that unwavering resolve, an unyielding strength. He was led to the king's war council, where Ilara, standing beside her father, met his gaze. There was no time for explanations, no room for old hurts. Their mutual love, forged in the crucible of separation and renewed by shared peril, shone as a beacon. The truth of their bond, the profound destiny that had intertwined their lives, was no longer a secret, but a critical element in saving their world. Together, they faced the growing darkness, two souls united by a love that transcended status, bound by a shared purpose to save a kingdom teetering on the brink of oblivion, a love strong enough to challenge destiny. Chapter 10. The Unveiling and a Kingdom Reborn. The ancient prophecy, retrieved from crumbling scrolls in the palace archives, was clearer than expected. When the heart of Eriador sickens, only the purest blood, guided by the Guardian's ancient light, can cleanse the land. A sacrifice of choice, not obligation, will mend the broken oath. The purest blood was Ilara, the Guardian's light, Kaelin. His ancestral tattoo, the symbol Ilara had glimpsed, was a dormant source of power, a key to understanding and directing the ancient magic of the land. A hidden power now revealed. Together, Ilara and Kaelin descended into the deepest catacombs beneath the palace, a place where the air grew heavy with ancient magic and dormant evil. A palpable sense of foreboding. The king, along with a few trusted mages and guards, waited above, their hopes pinned on the runaway princess and the imprisoned guard, their fate hanging in the balance. As they walked, Ilara and Kaelin spoke, not of their past hurts, but of their future, of the love that had defied all odds, a fragile hope in the overwhelming darkness. "I always knew you were more than you seemed," Ilara confessed, her hand finding his in the dark, a silent comfort. "Even when I thought you had betrayed me, a part of my heart refused to believe it." Kaelin squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her skin, a tender gesture of unspoken affection. "And I loved the princess who refused her crown for truth. It made my duty impossible, and my love undeniable." They reached a vast, subterranean chamber, at its centre a pulsating obsidian altar, its surface writhed with shadowy tendrils, the heart of Eriador. Corrupted by the curse, the air was thick with despair, a heavy blanket pressing down on their spirits. Kaelin revealed his secret. He was not merely a guardian, but the last of a lineage born with an innate connection to the earth's magic, capable of sensing its balance and channeling its power. The tattoo on his skin wasn't just a mark, it was a conduit, a living map of the kingdom's ley lines and ancient wards, a power he had concealed his entire life. "The prophecy requires a true sacrifice," Kaelin explained, his voice solemn, unwavering. "Not a life, but a choice, to freely choose the crown, not as a prison, but as a commitment, truly embracing the responsibility." Ilara understood. She had to choose to be queen, not out of obligation, not out of duty, but out of love for her people, a love born from her commoner life, a selfless decision. And Kaelin's role was to guide her, to channel the land's energy through her, the purest blood, uniting their destinies in a singular purpose. As the shadowy tendrils coiled towards them, reaching, grasping, Kaelin placed his hand over her heart, his other hand pressing the ancestral tattoo against the cold stone of the altar. He closed his eyes, his body trembling, as a brilliant blue light erupted from his tattoo, flowing into Ilara. She felt a surge of ancient power, warm and pure, coursing through her veins, invigorating her. Taking a deep breath, Ilara spoke, her voice echoing through the chamber, imbued with the power of the land and the conviction of her heart. A voice that carried the weight of a kingdom. "I, Ilara, choose to accept the crown of Eriador, not as a symbol of power, but as a vow of service. I choose my people, I choose their future, and I choose to fight for a kingdom where kindness triumphs and freedom thrives. This is my choice, freely given." truly embraced. As her words resonated, a blinding golden light burst from her, intertwining with Kaelin's blue energy. The obsidian altar shuddered, the shadowy tendrils recoiled, hissing into oblivion. The entire chamber glowed, a powerful surge of cleansing magic washing over them, purifying the ancient corruption. Above ground, the crimson sky turned back to a vibrant blue, the blight withered, and the shadowy creatures disintegrated. The heart of Eridor was cleansed. When the light faded, Ilara and Kaelin stood, exhausted but triumphant. The king and his advisors rushed down, relief and awe etched on their faces. Ilara, no longer just a princess, but a queen forged in sacrifice and love, embraced her father. But her eyes, filled with a profound devotion, found Kaelin. Their love, once a secret, now stood revealed not as a scandal, but as the very force that had saved their kingdom. Ilara, on her coronation day, stood not as a reluctant royal, but as a queen who understood her people, with Kaelin, her guardian, her beloved by her side. He served not as a mere bodyguard, but as her most trusted advisor, her silent strength, his unique connection to the land, a vital asset to her reign. Their roles were redefined, their love celebrated, their bond the foundation of a new era. Their story became a legend, whispered through generations, the princess who found her kingdom by losing her crown, and the guardian who found his purpose by losing his heart. Ilara and Kaelin often stole moments in the quiet palace gardens, watching the stars,